who did I think were the biggest sports nutrition brand winners of 2020? So if you guys have been a subscriber of my channel since the start, first off, thank you for being an OG follower. But this is actually going to be my third annual list that I put together. And you're going to see for the next couple of weeks that I'm going to be putting out a ton of like top 5 predictive or recap type lists. This is what I do every year. I know this is something that you guys enjoy. It's a ton of fun for me to put these videos together. But if you wanted to look back at my 2018 and 2019 winners in this category for the biggest sports nutrition brand winners, check out my Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram, please do that because I just made a post that does recap those winners. Now, this is not some like official competition. I don't ask for any like fan input. I don't have any fancy awards. Really, it's just my way of recapping the sports nutrition industry from my perspective, somebody that knows the space extremely intimately from just about every conceivable angle. And my hope is that the brands that I throw a little bit of love to appreciate it and think about it as like a badge of honor in a lot of senses. It's not going to be anything that they can hang up on their wall, but this year, 2020 was a lot different than maybe the last 2 years that I did these videos. Any strategic plans that these brands had at the beginning of the year, honestly heading into March, they just were obliviated. They were just smashed. There was nothing they could do because of COVID-19. And this was a lot different than any entrepreneur or professional that's been in the industry the last time we had any like recessionary periods in like 08, 09. And that's because of the restricted living situation, business closures, and specifically business closures around the gyms. The mobility and the lack of mobility of consumers hurt a lot of like the convenience active nutrition categories as well. But also this was not something that was just insulated through the US market. So any like legacy brands or brands that focused multinationally were dealing with this in different degrees throughout the world. And in some regions of the world, really it just kind of got shut off to nothing, which really kind of hurt probably a lot of their cash flow and a lot of their resource allocation and things that maybe even affected their US performance. As I mentioned before, with some of the mobility restrictions and just that finally starting to come back a little bit in the end of 2020, you had like energy drinks, you had protein bars, protein RTDs, those types of SKUs that have been high flyers for the sports nutrition or active nutrition industry. They were almost cut off unless you were in some select retailers. You were lucky enough to be positioned in those retailers, but a lot of that had a lot of pressure throughout 2020, and a lot of these brands that have went all in those categories had a very tough kind of middle of the year, but those have rebounded in the back half of 2020. But overall, the sports nutrition industry and just the supplement industry as a whole showed its resiliency, really was able to get past a very difficult year and a type of year that maybe people had originally written off the industry. I think they really rallied around the idea of this is a global health pandemic and people are looking for a lot of preventative health and nutrition solutions to get them through this any way possible. They're trying to kind of control anything that they can control. And sometimes that meant adding some additional supplements to the regimen or looking at fitness and health a little bit differently. There was some positive underlying trends that were balanced with a lot of people just being stuck at home and unfortunately not being able to be in the routine and not worried about staying in shape. But a lot of gritty entrepreneurs showed their colors. A lot of people really pivoted and turned their ships around and made this a very good year despite everything that happened around them. I do get asked each year, like, what is my rubrics? Like, how do I actually rate these brands, and really there's nothing formal. I don't have some like proprietary algorithm, or I don't hook up a ton of like analytics programs for a video like this. This is a combination of qualitative and quantitative. I've been in the industry now for well over a decade now. I've been a strategy consultant in the industry for 8.5 years. I know a lot about a lot, and because of that, this list, I hope it has some weight in the industry. I hope people look at it and go, wow, okay, this means something. I try my best to keep the bias out of these videos. I know that is impossible. I think it naturally happens because I have a certain amount of bandwidth, so I can't see everything at all times. I also have a very specific way that I look at the industry or just business ideology as a whole. Because of that, that probably creates blind spots or puts extra weight in certain areas that maybe some other people do not. One of those areas that people really kind of get upset about and get really frustrated about is that product is usually, or honestly, probably not the biggest component of this list. And I'm not necessarily saying that I don't look at product or I don't appreciate product. I just think that a great product is the entry fee to compete. So anybody that's on this list has great products. And I define great products as something that really is fit for market. So market product fit also is aligned with the intent of the brand, where their customers are at, their channels, their customer personas. I'm really just making sure that in my eyes, these things align correctly. And you could have the Ferrari of a product, but if you're positioned towards the lower end of the market for consumers that are just getting started, that product does not match up with who you're marketing to. So there's gonna be some pressure, there's gonna be some resistance, and I don't necessarily think that is something great. There's a lot of other lists, a lot of other thought leaders that put together like the best or their perception of what the best is products. You guys can listen to those. That's not my game. I'm looking at this more of a product market fit and how that product stacks up against the category, competition, and intended customer purchase criteria. So each year on these lists, I do a top 5. I count it back from 5 to 1. I also usually throw in a few honorable mentions, somewhere around like 3 or 4 of them. I did do 4 of them this year. The first one that I want to mention is NutraBio, and they were in my top 5 last year. And as I mentioned in some of these other like videos that I've done, it doesn't necessarily mean that they did anything wrong. It's just that other brands maybe did a little bit more to get into that top 5. But last year, I really put them in that top 5 because they had a ton of product launches. I think almost 1 or 2 a week. That was used to really create like buzz and get people to trial the brand, because the products are really great. They're really high quality products. So if they could get somebody into that funnel, they have a really good retention rate, and that really helped out NutraBio. Now, this year, they kind of laid off some of those launches, but the launches that they did do were really targeted towards like COVID-19, at least during that time. I think they did a lot of really great general health and wellness products during that time. Mark sent me some that he did make specifically during the initial part of that pandemic, so I thank him for that. I thought those products not only are gonna do great this year, they're gonna do great in the future, because that is a buzzy, trending vitamins, minerals, and supplements category. And this is just an example of having your own self-manufacturing. Like, you can turn things on in a dime and really kind of adjust to things that were happening. These were not products that were in the pipeline or in the product roadmap heading into 2020. But as things changed and as Mark saw some things happening in the US market and a need for these products, he was able to shift around his manufacturing capabilities and use that as an advantage. The second honorable mention brand that I wanted to kind of note is Glaxon. And each year I name one brand that's kind of like an upstart brand or a very early brand. And a lot of times it's a bookmark for me to like make sure I'm paying attention to them for the next year. And I think Glaxon, though I mentioned that I'm not a product guy by any stretch of the imagination, I thought their products are unique. I think their products are approached in a certain way. You can definitely see how the formulator and the people within the 4 walls of that company are thinking about the industry as a whole, and I appreciate that. I think their branding angle is unique, or at least differentiated enough that they can continuously play on that. And I think their year 1 performance should be able to build some momentum into year 2, where we'll be able to see if they're gonna have that staying power within the sports nutrition industry. The next brand that I wanted to mention is a brand that's probably not considered like sports nutrition in the traditional way, and this is Hum Nutrition. So this is a female-focused brand. The female consumer group within the sports nutrition and vitamins, minerals, and supplements category continues to flourish, and that has continued through 2020. And Hum Nutrition has done an impressive job at attracting these new consumers with matching products to certain use occasions and common problems for the gender that need solutions, be that put in a different way, communication style, the way that it's branded, the way that they are setting up some of their marketing funnels. Overall, everything just seems to be working out well. And they've had an excellent, I think, last 3 or 4 years, but throughout this year, they have grown immensely, and they continue to show that they can stay on brand and on trend. The last honorable mention brand is Phorm, and arguably they have some of the best funnels in the industry, and they do an exceptional job at building up their community. If you spend any time listening or just kind of paying attention to like social chatter on the brand or with some of their athletes or some of their ownership team or just some of their employees, there's a ton of it. There's diehard fans. And at the level that Phorm is at right now with revenue, it is very hard to ever get that level. Brands do not get to that level very often. So you have to just take your hat off and show them some love, because they've been able to build something that's extremely special. Now, getting away from the honorable mention and moving into the top 5, like I said, I'm gonna go from 5 to 1, because what would be any fun if I just blurted out number 1? So number 5 is Outright Bar, and they've been a little bit higher on my list. And the reason why they fell back this year was partly around how just the nutritional bar and protein bar market really had some struggles this year. I think that it was just overall like a very tough year for that category, but Outright Bar did continue to grow throughout the year. Their larger retail channel pushes were kind of normalized or kind of stepped back this year. A lot of that came down to merchandising cycles not being normal, but there was an announcement that they were going to be in Target, so that's a big plus for them. Got to appreciate that Mark Lobliner continued to keep his foot on the gas, launch a bunch of flavors and a bunch of different like iterations to the bar. I think a lot of the shopping trends moving digitally helped Outright Bar because they are vertically integrated with Tiger Fitness. And for me, it just continues to be one of those bars that I go back to time and time and time again. And I eat a lot of bars, I get a lot of things sent to me, and it's something that I constantly go back to. It's something that is relatable, not only to just people in the industry, but it has breakout potential way past the industry. And that's why I continue to talk so highly of it. The number 4 brand that I want to talk about this year in terms of the biggest sports nutrition brand winners is MyProtein. And for the US market and US sports nutrition professionals, you might be thinking, well, I don't really know how big they are, what they're doing in the US market. And I'll be honest with you, I think if I'm only giving this a look from the US market, I might not have had MyProtein on the list, and I wouldn't have had them, I think, as an honorable mention last year. But as a whole, like global growth, they had an impressive year. They do globalization better than anybody. So a global template, but a localized feel. I think they have 40 or 50 localized websites right now. Close to 80% of their sales are outside of their home country. And if you look at from start to finish with the Hut Group as their ownership and just some of the capabilities they have, front to back, it's very hard for any brand to match up for them on a global stance. Outside of maybe Glanbia, and Glanbia's got a ton of problems right now trying to get their whole system in place. If they were ever to put their pieces together, maybe there would be a great competition. But I think long term, a lot of the pieces that MyProtein has within their company are very much forward leaning, very much set up for the future. And I think that MyProtein is going to be a brand from a global standpoint that people are going to have to be paying attention to. They got to be honestly scared of, really. If anybody takes a look at the THG Ingenuity platform and just that flywheel and how that thing is going to start to turn as it becomes more popular. I mentioned a few times that this has like a mini Amazon potential to it. And if you look at any other brands that are on this list, Nobody's building these large flywheels, these large platform type of strategic builds. And because of that, they have a very unique advantage if they are able to continuously execute on it. The third brand that I wanted to mention was Redcon One, and they have been my number 2 for the last couple of years, but they kind of dropped down this year. I don't think this was the year that Aaron Singerman and the team over there really thought was going to happen. I think that the MRE RTD was really kind of bookmarked as their big launch for 2020, but it didn't happen until the last month of the year. So that really kind of slowed down a lot of the momentum. But I do respect that the team overall dug in and they were able to get through that tough patch during the kind of early to middle part of 2020. They also did a lot of like under the radar marketing creative moves and partnership moves. One specifically that I think maybe people don't really understand was their activation within the wrestling arena. During that time, like of COVID-19, there wasn't any live sports, and people can say, wrestling is not live sports, it's entertainment. But if you're looking at something that wasn't like taped and had a storyline, there wasn't very many live things during that period of time of COVID-19. You had UFC and you had wrestling. That was pretty much all you had until the NBA got started. So during that time frame, people were watching a lot of wrestling, and they did a good job at activating some of those wrestlers with Redcon One, be that through social media, be that through some clothing being worn during the shows. And then they did close out the year with a trailblazingly huge move with their Walmart launch that they didn't have to change formulas, they didn't have to change sizes, they didn't have to change a lot of things there. And that's important, and hopefully a lot of the industry is rooting them on because that can open up a lot of doors to shuttle in other brands with a similar strategy. Now, the number 2 biggest sports nutrition brand winner of the year is going to be Alani Nu. And last year, I put them on the list and they were number 4. Got a lot of crap. People were like, why'd you put them in the list? For a ton of different reasons. I won't drag any of those people through this, but I started to think and I thought, fuck it. It's my channel, I'm gonna move it up even further. So hey, you guys don't like it? Good for you. You guys don't understand Alani Nu. But what I'll say is that they did a great job at shifting out of the exclusive GNC contract. They've had a ton of great initial large retail launches with their energy drink. They expanded partnerships with key influencers. They've continuously found engaging influencers. I think their rebrand is extremely impressive. I thought the original labels and packaging were great, but I think the new ones are even better, especially for retail and them being introduced to a ton of like mainstream consumers. They've done a good job at expanding deeper into some snacking categories and moving away from just being that kind of traditional supplement form of like the caps, powders, pills brand and into a lot of different areas like gummies. But I've made you guys wait long enough. You probably already know who this is because I put it in the thumbnail and you clicked it and you know, but the winner for the 3rd time, so a three-peat, is going to be Ghost Lifestyle. And that's pretty boring. I keep naming him my biggest sports nutrition brand winner of the year. Why do I do that? Because I keep getting better every year. And because of that, I have to keep naming them. They are not falling back and closer to the brands that are on this list. They're actually moving away from them. I believe this will go down in history as one of the best yearly performances of a brand in the industry. And let me explain, because I think there's a ton of different layers to this that people maybe are not understanding. First off, general health and wellness supplements, they launched them. It was right at the time when the market was accepting of these things within the sports nutrition customers. They also had a social purpose layer to it that I think did well. I think it'll continue to do well. They launched a Nutri-Cosmetic product that actually was internally demand side innovation. So this was something that the internal team wanted. I think that was very authentic. That really gave them an upper hand in terms of the storytelling. They launched their gamer supplement, gaming, esports, everything has been pushed years forward, and Ghost Lifestyle has been able to do this in an authentic way that is almost unmatched in the industry. I think also their XSET strategic partnership is extremely undervalued within the sports nutrition community. I don't think people understand the potential with that strategic partnership. They've continued to create brand partnerships, authentic collabs that keeps that buzz going. The AB InBev ZX Venture joint venture partnership that hasn't really even gotten started yet really plays into the strengths of Ghost Lifestyle and takes a lot of like the financial risk layers or the large economic costs out of launching a beverage extension. I think people think that beverage or launching beverages is extremely easy, and just because of some success, maybe you see Bang Energy, maybe you see a few other ones you can name, but there is a graveyard of people that thought they could do it, especially sports nutrition brands that thought they could do it and they fail miserably. It's crumbled a lot of brands. So Ghost has done this in a different way. They are kind of saying, we don't know beverage, we don't know that space, but Anheuser-Busch knows that space. And because of that, their sales and marketing and distribution team could do really good. We'll focus on building the community, building the brand, making sure that this beverage is looked at cool, and will activate things in a very sound way that it's on brand for us in the way that makes it very Ghost. And then the kind of last, but certainly not least point that I wanted to make was that they stayed visible and transparent throughout the pandemic during the darkest hours, which I believe will be a defining moment for this brand. I think when everybody was looking to see what people were doing, they stayed out there, even if it wasn't pretty sometimes. I think that vulnerability is going to play and have a multiplier effect for this brand. Now, I can't say enough good things about Dan, Ryan, and the team at Ghost for their performance this year. I think from start to finish, they put together one of the best performances that I've seen in the industry as a whole. But what do you guys think of my list? Do you have other brands that you would have put it in the top 5? If so, drop a comment on this video or follow me on any of my other social media accounts. I am active on pretty much all social media. Just search my name and make sure you're engaging with my content on those platforms. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to help support me, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button on this video. If this is the first time you've been introduced to my videos, would love for you guys to be a part of my community by subscribing to my channel. I upload several videos just like this weekly. And if you guys want to connect further outside of this platform, I do include all of my social media links down below. I just want to thank you guys again for your time. Hopefully I gave you some value in return, and we'll see you guys on the next video.